Hi, good day. I'm number 3475 Firefighter Ramkissoon, attached to the Fire Service School. Today, we are going to just have a basic discussion and bring some clarity to the Fire Service Instruction number 4 of 1986 in regards to diary keeping. Within recent times, perusing through station diaries in various stations, we see a bit of inconsistency in the way diary keeping is done. So this is just a gentle reminder of what the Fire Service Instruction number 4 of 1986 states, and to bring some clarity on how we operate in the fire service. So I'm going to share a screen here with you, and we are going to delve into the topic. Diary keeping. I'm your presenter, number 3475, Firefighter Ramkissoon. The objectives at the end of the session, you will be able to state what is a station diary, state the purpose of a station diary, label the columns of the station diary, make accurate entries in the station diary. Also, we will be stating some points that is to be noted in the station diary and how to make a proper handover to a relievance entry. So let's get into the meat of the topic now. Station diary. Everybody should be familiar with what a station diary is. So we don't have to really go in depth into that. So a station diary is a main logbook where a chronological record of all, and all is highlighted in red to reiterate that everything must go in the station diary. All occurrences at the fire station is documented. The purpose of the station diary is to document fire service matters. All fire service matters, that is. From the movement of an appliance, any fire service related vehicle, to something happening in the station compound. Anything that is fire service matter, it should be recorded in the station diary. It's to document reports. Simple report from a sick leave to a complex report of a fire report. Messages, verbal or documented. Officer may call on the phone, right? Or a document may come down stating something from one of the ACFO meetings or a documentation from the chief fire officer. Visits of official personnel. Details of parades. During the course of our duty, there are many parades that we have. Not just Independence Parade or Remembrance Day parades. We have change of what parade. We have station duty parades, right? We have parades for drills. Instructions when an officer gives an instruction, it should be recorded in the diary. The whereabouts of all, I repeat, all ranks on duty. This is for accountability. It is very important that we utilize the station diary for these things. Point to note, personnel are not to decide which matters are of sufficient importance and require an entry in the diary. Right? As a sentry, you're not to be opinionated. You must not decide or say this is not important to go in the diary. Once it is fire related, fire service related, that is, it have to be documented. So the document that we are referring to is the Fire Service Instruction number 4 of 1986. Some people might say they have never seen this, but this is part of the Fire Service Training Manual. And this is what governs us to make entries in the station diary. This is more or less the Bible by which the entries are made in the station diary. As repeated earlier, the station diary is a chronological record of all occurrences at the fire station. These include all fire service matters, reports, messages, verbal or documented, visits of official personnel, property transactions, detail of parades, instruction, classes, the whereabouts of all ranks on duty, right? Reiterating again, personnel are not to decide what matters should be recorded in the diary. Everything that is fire related, fire safety related, must be documented in the station diary. This is a basic outline of how the station diary is ruled up. Right? We have a basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Right? The heading of the diary, station diary, day duty, number, reference number, subject, hour, nature of record. As we go along, we'll explain what each column is. It must be noted each page must be numbered in chronological sequence at the top left-hand corner of the left page and the top right-hand corner of the right page. As we know, it's a book, so when it opens like that. So the numbering must be in the corners, right? Top left-hand corner, top right-hand corner. The current date must be placed in block. See, it's highlighted there. Block letters at the top of every page before entries are made. When we say the top of the page, what we tend to see when we see somebody diaries on the different stations, they put the date across here. When we question them, question individuals, why you put the date across here? They say that's the top of the page. This could never be the top of the page. I have to say the date must be placed in block letters at the top of every page. This is the top of the page. Top is the uppermost part of anything. At the top of a mountain, that's the highest point of the mountain. At the top of the page is the highest point of the page. Some people argument is that there's not enough space. There's not enough space to put the date. But try as much as possible when you could put the date to the top, put it to the top. Column 1 will contain the consecutive number of each entry. The first entry after midnight on each day will be given number 1. See that right? Number 1. Not 01, not 10 or 001. 1. As we can clearly see it here in the number column. 1, 2, 3. And as stated before, the date is to the top of the page. When entry makes reference to a previous entry or bears some relevance to it, the entry number of the entry being referred to shall be entered into the reference number column of the new entry being made. So what they're simply saying, draw a reference to what you are making. Right? As we can see, some entries are here, this example here. Right? Entry number 12, we have number 535 water tanker out. And we have number 13, entry number 13, EDFO in. And then we have number 14. Now we see something in the reference column. Right? So the page number is number 8, and the reference, the entry number is number 12. So the entry number over the page, so number 14 is referring to entry number 12 of the same page here. Right? Number 12, page 8. Number 535, water tanker in. Number 3474 firefighter Rajkumar driving number 535 water tanker along with FWSO Joseph in charge and all personnel returned to station. So if you go back to entry number 12 here, we would see who was the crew that went out. Columns number 3, 4, and 5 are self-explanatory. Right, so column number 3 is the subject, column number 4 is the hour, and column number 5 is nature of record. Column 3, the subject column. This column states the title or the heading of the nature of record. This entry is usually in block letters. Right, what the column 3 or the subject column tells you is what to expect in the nature of record. It must give you an idea of what you're going to write in the nature of record. It should tell you who you're going to write about or what you're going to write about. Right, so it's just a title to the nature of record. And this is usually in block letters. Right, the hour column, column number 4. We have been taught this from induction training. We use the 24-hour clock. Right, we have a stipulated way in which we write the timing in the 24-hour clock. It should be pay particular attention when we are writing this. The nature of record. The nature of record column, this column states in detail the particulars of the subject in sentence formation utilizing the laws of grammar. Wow, that's a lot to digest there. In sentence formation utilizing the laws of grammar. Not to chastise anybody, when we visit stations and we pull the station diary, some of the writing that we get is very atrocious, and mind you, English is a criteria to come in the job. So the laws of grammar needs to take precedence when we are writing our entries. For example, what is a sentence? A sentence is made up of one or more words. In other words, is a group of words that make sense. Right? A sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with a full stop, question mark, or an exclamation mark. This is one of the most basic rules in English language. Right? We start a sentence with a capital letter. Not the symbols and stuff we've been seeing. We don't start with a number. We don't start with a symbol, because we see some entries seen with the hashtag or the tic-tac-toe sign. Right? Entries has been started with that. Some entries are just started with a number. But you have to utilize the laws of English language when we are making our entries in the diary. Because at the end of the day, this diary could be summoned to court. An excerpt from the diary could be summoned to court. And when it goes before the magistrate, we want to look professional. Right? The key word here, professional. Good. Let's continue. Below the last entry, before midnight, two lines will be drawn across, superimposing the already made lines. The lines immediately below and that after the next will be used. On the middle line, the next date is to be inserted in block letters. Good. This is our next one. We've seen a lot of ambiguity and a lot of what people feel. Right? So we have an example here of what is to be done. So we are seeing entry number 21 here. Number 535, water tanker in. Number 22, FSO in, right, and that time was 2305. We had no entries until after midnight there. So the date changed from Monday the 14th of September, it went to Tuesday the 15th of September. So what they're simply telling you, as the document number 4 of 1986 states, you superimpose the lines already made, right? We superimpose them, this line here, right? And on the middle line, the next date is to be inserted in block letters. So we see on the middle line, it is inserted in block letters. Not across the line here, where it looking like the Tuesday, the 15th of September would have been scored off, or not below here, and I'm not taking up the whole space. The date, when you're writing the date in block letters, it must look bold, it must stand out. That's the purpose of the block letters, for it to stand out from the rest of your entries. At the start of each day, the first entry will be stated, the officer in charge of the station. That is the officer in charge of the watch. So we see after Tuesday the 15th, the date was written. The first entry is in charge at 0001. FSO Mahadev Singh is in charge of the fire service school. You have some contention with who is in charge. If someone is not there, can they be in charge? That's the question. Right? So it have to be whoever is there who could account for what taking place at that point in time. Yes, we have an ACFO in charge of a division, and probably, for example, in the central division, we have an ACFO in charge of the central division, and the central division headquarters is Shogunas Fire Station. But at that point in time, the in charge of the watch is there. That's the person in charge. All entries will be made neatly and legibly in ink. All emergency records will be made in red ink, and all others will be made in black ink. Here's an example of how entries are to be made. Right, we have some contention with what is an emergency. Right, once the emergency bell is sounded, it's considered an emergency. We have some ambiguity. We are still clearing up on what code should be going in red and what will be going in black. But according to the document at this point in time, number 4 of 1986, all emergency records will be made in red ink and all others be made in black ink. An entry of particular importance when recorded will be highlighted by 2 perpendicular lines in red ink, rules on the left-hand side of column 5. Column 5 is the nature of record. So in the nature of record, this is the left side, this is the right side. So on the left-hand side, on the inside of it, some people, what we are seeing in some stations, one of the red line is here on the right-hand side of the line, and one is on the left-hand side of the line. That's wrong, because if you read, an entry of particular importance when recorded would be highlighted with 2 perpendicular lines in red ink, rule on the left-hand side of column 5. This is column 5, this is on the left-hand side of column 5. All entries will be made immediately after they occur, as much as possible, because of the nature of the call that we get, or the nature of the station. If it's a busy station, We must develop systems to have the entries made as soon as possible as they occur, right? They must be chronological. They must be time relevance. Time relevance meaning that they should be in aligned with the time that the occurrence took place. There will be no interlineation, overwriting, scoring, or erasure of any kind whatsoever in the station diary. Right, as I saw erasures here, erasing. There's a new trend that is taking place, and we spotted it in a couple of stations. People are using pens that could erase, some black ink pens. Cease and desist from that. Because I, as a wicked man, I will come and take a eraser and rub off the whole page. And when you come, you go see it have a blank page in the middle of the diary. And after time, what tends to happen with friction when the pages are turning, right, the ink started disintegrate also, right? So back to where we are, no interlineation. Interlineation, some people might know what the interlineation is. No words or lines must be inserted in between lines or words already written. And we just put the upside down triangle, no. We have things for that. We have mechanisms to deal with that. No overwriting. No writing on top of writing. We see that plenty of times. Some people like they are tracing. No scoring. No crossing or scratching off of words or lines. I don't know, can't remember the particular station, but we see people cross off a line and they put the initials at the end of it. As I said, we have mechanisms to deal with these. As mentioned before, a matter that has been overlooked will be deemed an omission. An omission entry will be made carrying the subject omission and the relevant information placed in column 5. Right? So if you watch the trend here with the numbering is good, and watch entry number 7 lights on at 0500 hours. Entry number 8 physical training at 0530 hours. Entry number 9 bell test at 630 hours. But something was missing between 5:30 and 6. So this is where it comes into place. Number 10, omission. Right? Something was missing between this time and here. This is where the omission comes into play. At 0:30, 06:30, 31, we recognize that something was done. Put the coinciding time there. And this is how the entry should be stated. At approximately 0600 hours, FWSO Pilgrim paraded number 3474 Firefighter Raj Kumar to hoist the national flag of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the fire service flag at the fire service school. Problem solved. We didn't have to insert a line in between there and squeeze it up, right? That's where they say no interlineation. So this is one of the mechanisms that was put into place to deal with when something was left out on omission. An incorrect entry will be corrected by making another entry carrying the reference number in the reference column. Correction as a subject and the relevant detail placed in column 5. The corrected entry will be also cross-referenced with the corrected entry. Wow, a lot of words. We see people making a mess of this and people underutilizing a correction also in some of the station diaries. This is a basic example here. And when you read the entries on the officer rank, there was an error in the officer's rank and it was corrected. So let's look at the example. Entry number 29, FSO in. So it tells you FSO in. But when you watch the nature of record, we see it was recorded as FWSO comments reported in the fire service school. So we realized that there was an error, so we made a correction immediately thereafter, referring to the entry number entry number 29 of page 19, correction. With reference to entry number 29 on page 19, in the nature of record column, let the entry read FSO comments reported in the fire service school. What we also see in some of the station diaries, some people make an error with like the numbering. They would have probably 2 or 3 of the same number. Most of the time we will see 2 numbers, like we might have 2 number 29. Right. You also can make a correction for that. When you just double the count, 29, 30, 31. Right? The entry number 31 would read 31 correction with reference to the second number 29 on whatever page, says the same page. Let entry read number 30 and continue in numerical order. And some people add, we see that they put an A and B. There's no way, in no documentation in the fire service states that you have to put you are required to put an A or a B. As I said, we have mechanisms in place to correct these little errors that may occur in diary keeping, omissions, and corrections. No blank spaces will be left in column 5 with the nature of, which is the nature of record. At the end of an entry, the remaining space, if any, will be scored off with a wavy line. So we see we have a wavy line here, a wavy line here, a wavy line here. In some of the stations, we see there are many artists and painters in the stations. They give you all type of wavy lines. Right. When handing over the duties of the watchroom / control room, the format will be adopted in the diary. This is straight from the document number 4 of 1986. Watchroom, whatever time, number so-and-so, reported for sentry duty at so-and-so watchroom or so-and-so control room. Handover duties, I've handed over the duties of the watchroom sentry to number so-and-so with the following items in good order. As much as possible, list everything that is there in the control room that needs to be listed, list it. All the record books, list it. The appliances, list it. The ambulances, list it. Because people tend to get lazy, so to speak, and they started to just put like the shortcut way, right? And leave out a whole set of things. And months after, when they're trying to account for certain things, they're missing. The certificate now, I hereby certify that entries made on pages, if you do many pages, on what page, para, what para, to what page, at what para, are true and correct to the best of my knowledge and ability. This is where we see a whole set of madness starting to take place now. Signatures will be affixed to the end of both the handover duties and the certificate by the sentry to be relieved. So I'm the sentry, I'm handing over. I am to put my signature at the end of the handover and the certificate. The relieving sentry will clarify entries made by the sentry to be relieved. The relieving sentry will affix his signature after his predecessor in the handover duties only. This signifies his acceptance of the responsibility of the watchroom. So that is why it's recommended when you're going to take up sentry duties, you reach here a bit earlier so you can verify everything that was handed over is there. right? What we tend to do, or what we are seeing being done at stations now, people leaving a space, right? They don't know who's in incoming sentry. I've handed over the duties of the control room to space, and whatever, and they sign off, and they leave the space. That's the norm that is taking place in the stations now, and the norm is wrong. Signatures are to be affixed close to the last word of the paragraph or sentence. If there's no room, it will be affixed on the next line, scoring off the remaining portion. Self-explanatory. Once you have not dug in to go in the line, you score off the line. When no signature is required at the end of the paragraph or sentence, the remaining portion of the line from the last word to the edge of the page will be scored off using a wavy line. So as I mentioned, a wavy line, this is a wavy line. This is a straight line. This is a line with dash. I don't know what is this one. I know is this are a set of stars. Some people giving you hearts, right? The document said wavy line, put a wavy line, not a straight line, not a dash line. All reference to members of the fire service will include their rank and service number. The names of all persons will be entered in block letters. Care must be taken in ensuring the correct spelling. If in doubt, the correct spelling is to be requested from the person. Like my name, it's a hard name, Ff Ramkissoon. Plenty of people don't know how to spell it. It doesn't hurt you to ask a person to spell their name. And remember, it must be in capital letters so you can easily identify. Right, the officers responsible for running the shift will examine all entries made in the station diary during his tour. This will be done between the hours of 16 and 1700 hours on the day shift and 700 and 800 hours on the night shift. He will afterwards certify that all entries are in order by making a certificate entry in the diary to which he will affix his signature. Right, this is our next piece of madness that we see a couple of times as the year changes. At the end of the year, two parallel diagonal lines will be drawn across a new page and new year and the new year written midway between them. Right, like you see, for although they said will be drawn across a new page. Although you use one line on one side of the page, still score it off, and you go on a new page and draw two diagonal lines from left to right, and the right, the new year between them. On this instance, some people we see that put happy old years, right? And then they come here happy new year. But all I ask you is to just write the new year between the lines. When an appliance is dispatched, the entry must include the service number of all members of its crew, except in the case where a temporary fireman is a member of the crew. The name will be written, right? That's come, for example, an auxiliary. If auxiliary is a member of the crew, well, auxiliary have numbers. You can also state their numbers and their names too. On the return, the entry must account for all personnel, in which case the listing of the numbers is not necessary. What we could do, or what is recommended, just draw a reference number to the original entry that was made. And if you want to see the members who was there, you just go back to the original entry and you see the crew members with their service number. So basically, in a nutshell, this is number 4 of 1986. This what dictates us how to make entries in a station diary. Everything is clear-cut and it's written there, so it shouldn't have no problems. But points to note before we close off this session here. Before entries are made in a diary, all pages must be numbered and certified. This certificate is done on the last page on the reverse side of the diary. This is usually done by the officer in charge of the watchroom or in charge of the watch. All entries should be done in scrap, vetted first before it is entered in the diary to avoid mistakes as much as possible. Because I could clearly remember mentioning while we were discussing number 4 of 1986, is that the diary could be summoned to the courts. And when you summon to the court, it want to look as professional as possible. The station diary is a legally binding document. All protocols as outlined in the Fire Service Instruction number 4 of 1986 must be adhered to. All English language rules also apply to diary keeping. These include sentence formation. We mentioned start a sentence with a capital letter and with a full stop, question mark, or exclamation mark. Punctuation. Punctuation changes the whole meaning of the sentence. Spelling. Spelling is very important because if you spell someone's name wrong, especially a person's name, it could change the entire meaning of what you're trying to bring across, and it will not be the same person that you're trying to speak about. There are certain standard entries which must be entered in the diary at particular times. Here's a list of a couple of them. The in charge at 001, flag hoisted at 0600 hours, bell test 0630 hours, there's another bell test at 1200 hours, flag lowered at 1800 hours, bell test at 2000 hours, roll call at 2130 hours, lights out 2230 hours. These are some of the more basic, this is some of the basic entries that goes in the diary. These are some of the standard entries that goes in the diary. The station diary is one of the most basic form of record keeping in Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. It is imperative that all entries are made in a timely manner, free from ambiguity, do not contain personal feelings, and must be written legibly. If some people know their font and writing is not legible, work on it. It must be legible. Remember, you don't know who's going to read the diary. Always think about the person that is going to read the diary. They must be able to understand what they read. Right? In conclusion, it's the responsibility of everyone to keep good diary keeping skills. Right, so diary keeping is one of the fundamentals of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. Prelude, this is a prelude to record keeping, right? Because diary keeping ties into record keeping and stuff. Because what the diary keeps a lifeline or a cognitive life of the station's activities. So when we go into record keeping now, you would understand how diary keeping ties into record keeping and the importance of diary keeping and how diary keeping could help you or it could bury you, so to speak. All right, with that being said, it was my pleasure to bring across this information to you here today. I hope it clears up some of the ambiguity you're having with diary keeping, and look forward to more presentations like this. All right, for questions, any questions, feel free to email us at thefireserviceschoolhq@gmail.com. As soon as possible, we will get back to you with a favorable response. Good day.